stuck between a libertarian and a Republican. Welcome to Publitarian Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you again with another episode of Publitarian Podcast. And I am very excited to be interviewing my next guest. Why don't you tell us about the next guest, Mr. Announcer Guy?
And now, Publitarian Podcast is proud to present a viral artist, comic creator, and also a savage memer, Jim Bob.
That's right, this is episode 37, and I am very fortunate to have with me today the Instagram sensation, the artist known as Jim Bob, who does the very funny comic made by Jim Bob. How are you doing today, Jim Bob?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on. And let's get right to it. I went to your Instagram and did the appropriate amount of Instagram stalking, and I gotta say, your comics are freaking hilarious. It's like the perfect blend of truth and hilarity all wrapped up into one package.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm going for.
So, if you wouldn't mind, can you just tell me a little bit about your art background? Were you formerly trained?
Not really. I was drawing, I think, before I was speaking to some extent. So I was always an artist at heart. And then I just kept doodling and drawing and making things. And I never really knew what kind of content to attack. And it kind of rendered my skill and my interest in art like meaningless, like because there's nothing to say. So, and that's seems to be common as you're young. So as I grew older, I'm now 37, having gone through some life and some ideology shifts with a little help from some very honest friends. I kind of found myself going down a path of political cartoons or cultural cartoons and trying to find some principles behind them so that they could really stand out. And that's kind of like how it went. You know, it went from meaningless art to what am I going to say here? And I'm glad I found something to say.
Yeah, we are too, as an Instagram community. Like I said, I'm a big fan of your work. And what's funny, like if I go back and I look at the history of your art, you kind of answered part two of my question that I was going to ask you. Like, what was the time when your art became like more political than cultural? And it seems to have taken place maybe around the 2016 election.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because, I'm a jewelry maker. So I was living in Los Angeles. I had a store that was failing. I started doodling and I was watching Game of Thrones, actually. And basically, it started with one doodle. I drew a Game of Thrones doodle of Arya, the character, at Starbucks. And she says, what is the line? Like, the girl has no name. It was really like not well done, but the execution of it was done, but not the technical skill. Because I drew it in bed, like with these bad like colored pencils. But I woke up and it went viral. It was like George Takei, like posted it. The actress from Game of Thrones posted it, and I just
Oh, no way.
Holy crap, this thing is crazy. And I sold it. I sold the original for like $350. And it was only then that I realized, like, wow, you could actually, like, there's something to this meme thing, but I don't know what it is. And so, I started chasing that high of viral luck, kind of, which is really not a great way to approach drawing in general. But so I started doing stuff like that, started doing like kind of cute, intellectual, smart stuff. And then I had a friend named Prey Harper in Los Angeles, and he's older and he's been through it all. And he just pulled me aside one day and he's like, your goal can't be to have George Takei, like, share your stuff. It's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you saying? Are you just being cute? Are you being honest? Like, you're just kind of going with the, you're being really safe. And I always annoyed me because I knew it was true, but I didn't know where to go. So it was like this: I know you're right, but don't. I don't want you to tell me what to draw. And he wouldn't, but at the same time, he was pushing me in a direction that was more honest and a little bit more, I guess, aggressive or sharp. And
Right.
I really didn't know what that was. And then, I did another one that went super viral of a policeman shooting at his own shadow, and it didn't have any words, and it was shared like 80,000 times on Facebook.
Wow.
It really got people riled up in the comments section. A lot of like pro police people arguing about it, and then like it was like Black Lives Matter, so it kind of went with that. And then I almost got on like this sort of liberal train at that point, because I was like, oh, I could just like make these like narrative memes and I know they're agreeable. And then,
Right.
nope, my friend, he confronted me. He said, like, are you being honest? Is it true? And so, is it true has been sort of a mantra for me. It's like a barometer. I check in, and there's probably, uh, I don't know, there's probably a percent of truth that I consider a passing grade to post. And so I just started looking from there. And then during the election, I started seeing inconsistencies and sort of like these double standards taking place in LA online. And I started kind of saying stuff, and I immediately got attacked for saying things. And it was pretty much at that point I knew I have to make memes that bring attacks to me. I need to be attacked. That's the goal. And it's not to get a reaction. It's very different than getting a reaction. That's easy. Getting attacked it's from an ideological perspective, So there's a difference between being attacked and making something that's just causes a reaction, because the reaction stuff is really easy.
That's really good. So your friend, was he like a conservative, or was he just seeing your art and just wanting to call something out for what it was? I'm
Um,
curious about
I don't think he would have. I mean, if you gave him like a survey, it probably would come up conservative. But he's this guy who grew up in Burbank, and he was he made a lot of music. He wrote a song for like what's his name? What's the guy who sings "Hello"?
that. Oh, is it me you're looking for? Lionel Richie.
Yeah, Lionel Richie. He had like, and so he's just in that world, and he knew that. I think he was fighting more for like true liberalism. Like he knew that the new version was not that. It was more leaning toward like authoritarianism. So he was
Right.
fighting that, and trying to bring people back to the real stuff. So, but he's also this, wild man in the bars, and he gets kicked out of bars for being loud and disruptive. He calls himself a scallywag, and and a clown and a jester. So that's his role, and his job is to disrupt order and the illusion that there's some sort of control over you. So yeah, it's like he had, what it would be? It would be wholesome. He really pushed. He said, uh, your tunes are developing, but if you push wholesomeness, you're not only going to find your base, but you're going to find your opposition, and the two of them together is what makes it all work. You need both of them. It's kind of like a plane that's taking off. It needs the air under it, to the resistance to push it upward, and often the resistors don't realize they're doing most of the work.
Okay, that answered my next question then about how you welcome the debate, like how you seem to welcome the challenge on social media, which on my account, I do the exact opposite. So that's why I have an appreciation for people like you that just like stand in front of the storm and be like, I know it's coming. Here it is. And
Yeah. No, that's what's so fun about it, is because, and it's practice. It's like I know I want to be sharp about what I believe and what my principles are. And where I'm unsure or I don't have enough information or enough ammunition, the only way to get into it is to just do it. And you can't do it by agreement. Sometimes you can learn from people like a small echo chamber or like a group kind of dynamic where everyone's learning new things. But the best is when you're confronted, and then you have to like actually do some research and look things up. And but uh, I'm confident because I mean it's not so much information based or fact based. It's principle based. So
Right.
it leaves me in a really powerful position because it doesn't matter. It's not about being right about the interpretation of the Constitution or was were the Nazis socialists or were they something else? And all this categorization and being right about how to interpret or look at something is usually like you'll find that on my threads. But me personally, I always want to reduce to principle because the question always is, well, what do we do? And who decides? And it's something I learned from Thomas Sowell. It's like, no matter what the argument is, the question is always, well, who decides and what do we do and who decides what we do? And it's always, everything can be reduced to voluntarism or force. It's like
Right.
persuasion or force. Are we arguing, should we try to lead culture in this one way? And that alone gets misinterpreted as let's use force to make culture go in this one way. And so I see all these things layering and getting misinterpreted and confused, but it's very helpful to kind of swim through the matrix of it because you have to constantly ground yourself in like, well, what is it I'm arguing? Which is great. I mean, that's I think the real value of an argument or a debate is to come back. If you're wrong, to have your mind changed, but if you're right, to have a stronger understanding of why you believe what you believe. Because in the end, you actually don't. I don't believe we change people's minds. I think they have to face enough cognitive dissonance that it's unbearable, and and that they just have to surrender because it's too much work to hold up the lie. And that's something that happened to me. It was just like I'm not I'm not leftist at all. Like I lived in LA and thought, oh well, no, you gotta vote based on like symbolism and what people their good intentions, and it doesn't matter if they're ineffective. Like it's better than
Right.
those other guys, and it's just like it's such nonsense.
And with your comics, what I like about it is you illustrate, well, as Limbaugh says, you illustrate absurdity with absurdity, it seems sometimes. Like you're a character, I'm assuming it's your character sometime that's on the other side. Like one
Yeah,
person will
great.
say something and then you will answer back with something absurd. And those are like my favorite ones that you do.
Yeah, those are. It's funny because I started creating those and I couldn't quite. Sometimes I would confuse myself as to what technique I was using. I'm like, because people are like, that's a straw man, and a lot of times I am using a straw man, but I'm also using it in a way that's sufficient to answer the first claim, but in a sarcastic way where both statements are untrue most of the time. Like that's the thing. But sometimes I couldn't wrap my head around it, and I was like, what is this? Is it satire? Is it hyperbole? Doesn't matter. Like, do I need to know what it is? All I know is I could hear a claim, and I naturally can come up with a ridiculous, reductive response to it that's equally absurd and sort of draws the viewer into what it's really triggering what they think. It's like a lot of times the most absurd things I've written, people actually think that I'm agreeing with them, and then their whole other side understands that I'm making fun. And so much so that I had some really big sort of writer leader in the feminist, identitarian sort of intersectionality movement post my work and like say thank you so much, and little did they know I got like 1,000 followers, and then slowly they started seeing some of my other stuff, and they were just like they went after the woman like, how dare you. That's just a testament to like it's it's up to the viewer. I don't like memes that are entirely conclusive. Like they're conclusive for me because I'm making them. I know what I think. But when you see
Right.
a meme and it's just like it's just so they're making the conclusion. You're either just agreeing or disagreeing. These I want people to. They're almost like, why do I think this is right or wrong? And they have to actually participate because it's not in the comic. I don't include the information. Sometimes I do, but most of the time there's no like quantitative thing. Like there's no numbers to argue with most of the time. Like they're not arguing with numbers. They're arguing with like, is that true or not?
Right. And that's what's great about art, because art should make you think. Art should be open to interpretation. And that's one of the brilliant things about the comic, because sometimes, especially with the style that you do on some of them, I have to sit there for a minute and go, uh-huh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's thought provoking, and that's great. But I love that the humor and the provocation is done so well that some people don't know that it's being done to them.
yeah,
That's
yeah. And again, it's like I don't sit there and go, "This is really like gonna do this to them." It's like I just naturally think of the silly response, and then I examine it, and I go like, "How uh, true is that, or how untrue is that?" And if it's a certain level, I'll post. And sometimes what really annoys people is like the most criticism I get is nice straw man, or like that's a false equivalency, and there's a lot of other labels like that, and I'm like, and if that's true, fine, but I feel like that's really a lazy way to combat an argument. Like, is just saying those words, because now it's gotten to the point where saying straw man is its own straw man. It's like a meta straw man that's being used, and it's a result of disagreeing with the viewer is disagreeing with their own interpretation of what they think I'm saying. So it's a lot of times they're not even interacting with the piece. They're interacting with what they think I mean versus what the
right.
piece is saying, which is also adds to the fun. Where it's like, no, that was a misinterpretation.
Yeah, a lot of things get inferred that are not implied, especially on, well, political spectrum. Like I never would have like pegged you as like a right wing MAGA guy or whatever, but because you have the audacity to approach truth in your memes, that automatically gets assumed by the other side of the political aisle.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not. I heard one of your podcasts, and I don't know if it was an intro, but it was like confused libertarian Republican
Yeah,
in between, like all this stuff. And I just love how honest that is, because like I'm an artist, so like I could probably answer a survey and then it'll peg me in like a square, like a Venn diagram or whatever. But like I
exactly.
have like conservative family values, and I have very liberal sense of like free speech and all of that, and as far as policies, it's just like it depends what the policy is, and I don't really care. My sense of governing is that it should be so small that it's not important. It's like you know what I mean, like I want to reduce government small enough to where it can't be really bought, it's not worth buying, and and that it's not worth using some sort of authoritarian measure to utilize either. In which case, like in that regard, it would be like the two extreme sides would be closer together, because they would all know like, oh, we can't actually, like, government's not our answer, like our beating stick, like to hit the other side and take turns every 4 years or whatever. But yeah, and I let people think what they want, because it's like there's a part of what Donald Trump does that I love. I love how he trolls people and he gets the media so riled up, and he's just, the thing is, like, if you hate him or love him, the next president, the level of energy and craziness that's the precedent for the next president is just, it's going to be horrible for them. Like, because
It's going to be some big shoes to fill for sure.
it's going to be so boring, like, especially for the people who despise them, like, they're going to be so bored. They're going to be like, I guarantee there's going to be like, we miss that, like, because there's so much to say, there's so many angles to attack, but I love that part of it, and I really have pulled myself a little bit further away from being so invested in, like, politics from a party perspective, because I know that's just doubling down on government, so that's how I kind of see it. I'm like, I think we have to, for me, it's like, all this, the most important thing is that, family, local, that you concentrate on your local life and your family and your communities, and that you have people you can trust, and there's people who know how to grow food, and a lot of people don't plan for, like, catastrophe either. And I'm not like a
Right.
bunker dude, but at the same time, our dollar could turn into toilet paper with one swift move. So I don't think people generally think about that stuff, and that to me is way more important than if this policy is going to pass or not, or whatever. So
I think we just became best friends, basically. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. Speaking of the president and savage memery, obviously one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast was to talk about your upcoming book, and I believe it is called Savage Memes.
It is Savage Memes Volume 1. It's called. That title came to me through the comments section, simply from the word savage. It's been used a lot on the internet. It was kind of a low hanging fruit name, but it just looked so good on the page. I was just like, that's it. But it's not, I don't, yeah, it's written in the title page. It's an illustrated guide to bad ideas. That's how I look at the book. Yeah, it's going well. I mean, this is my first book. I've created the book because I've been censored enough where I'm like, I question my shelf life online, and I don't want to have to start all over again. The importance also of operating creatively in the physical space is something that I think a lot of people, maybe a lot of artists, underestimate. Like, to exist physically is as important, because all the digital stuff can go away, it can be erased, it can be mismanaged, it could be edited. And so that's another kind of principle that I'm returning to as well. It's like, I want this in someone's house and they have it. You know what I mean? It's physical. So that's why I made the book, and people were asking me to make a book. But it's going really well. I mean, I've sold a bunch already, way more than I thought, and I've got a lot. Like, I really want to line up more podcasts to talk about it. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, well, not to ingratiate myself to you further, but I did purchase a copy myself.
Oh, thank you.
And, and it is going to be sitting on our coffee table.
Good. Yeah. So it's a nice book. It's a hardcover book. I would say it's about 100 pages, 100 to 150 comics. There's single frame, there's 5 frame, 6 frame, 2 frame, and they're all my personal favorites, but also ones that are really more cutting than anything. So yeah, it's really, it's exciting. It's really fulfilling, actually, for me to do this.
So if people are interested in the book and want to pick up a copy, where do they need to go?
Oh, you can go to madebijimbob.com, and it'll show up like right away, the first page. So it's $40. It's about $2.99 shipping. I ship internationally as well. I wanted to keep the shipping down to entice people. And the first run will probably end starting in March. So I'll stop taking orders around then. And that'll be the first run.
Okay, that was the next question I was going to ask is when it's going to actually physically be available.
Oh, if you order, it'll ship in May,
Okay.
within the
Very.
month of May.
And then also I've noticed promoting your book, you've done a few Instagram stories to where you've like become this character.
Oh, that's Caleb. Yeah, Caleb Ashton Blake, I think his name is gonna be. Yeah, he's my nemesis. He hates my account. He wants it banned. He wants everything. He wants to go after hate speech, hate books, hate toys, hate anything. And he's really starting a campaign. He said he might start a YouTube channel where he debates people about socialism.
Oh
And,
my gosh.
and that's going to be fun. I think he's going to be doing his first debate soon, probably before the end of the month, on Made by Jim Bob's live stream against this man Josh, who's a libertarian writer, very well versed in the Constitution, etc. So we'll see how Josh does, because he's definitely the underdog.
That's great.
Yeah, and Caleb there has also he's almost done editing a PSA, a hate speech PSA specifically about this book. So stay tuned.
Well, Caleb will probably do well because he's got all of the mainstream media and Hollywood elite on his side. So, I mean, we got to watch out for him.
That's right, and something I personally think of having him be one of my alter egos is that I have to be careful of the law of unintended consequences. Like, I could actually get my book banned, and he could show up on CNN and not even realize it. Like a whole movement.
That would be so freaking awesome if that happened.
I really want to go like on Tucker Carlson with him, with the and just go full 100%.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Yes. Well, good luck to Caleb in that endeavor because I would really enjoy seeing that.
Well, maybe if once he's well developed, he can even make an appearance on your podcast. Maybe challenge you on some things.
I would love that because I don't debate as a rule, but I would love to debate with Caleb.
Exactly.
Oh man, Jim Bob, it has been a blast having you on this podcast. You're welcome to come back anytime you want. Caleb is welcome to come back anytime. just let me know. So thanks for being on.
Thank you. It was fun.
And once again, that is madebyjimbob.com. You can find his book at madebyjimbob.com. And his Instagram is madebyjimbob. Hilarious memes, really good art. Be sure to check him out. And that will do it for us this time at Publitarian Podcast. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Publitarian Podcast. Copyright 2019.